few little chockies for you to taste if you want to.
Nice, thank you.
They're not beautifully presented, but they do taste good.
They look a little bit like pet food.
No, I had to wrap them up because I didn't know if you had any allergies or
drugs.
anything.
No, I don't have any allergies.
I was once travelling to Brussels.
Yeah.
For my father's 70th? Because they all live over there, apart from my mum. And I had these little. I didn't even thought about it. So I was doing spherification at the time. So I had syringes and these little wraps of powders.
Yeah.
That you use for the gelling aid because I didn't want to take the whole kit across.
No.
And then I thought, it was only when I got there, I thought to myself, how the fuck did I not get stopped at customs?
Oh, did you not get stopped?
No,
oh, wow.
because literally they were like little wraps
yeah.
of powder in cling film
Yeah.
and a syringe. Like it was dodgy as hell, but yeah.
How long ago was that?
7 years ago?
Oh, so like, yeah, pre or post 9/11 when everything went bad. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, half the stuff that they do, I don't think they really do it. It's more for a show, isn't it? When you go through customs, it's very much like, oh, look at this and do all this, and then if you kind of go through a bit blasé, they don't really care and take any notice, do they? But
and when they do stop you, they're not. Sometimes they're not even properly searching. They're just assessing how, like, they're looking at what your reactions are.
Yeah. I find that a lot if you go to like a rave or a festival as well. They're normally like, they let the dog go around and sniff you, and then it's not the dog, it's the reaction to the dog that you have, and then they'll go, oh no, you've got to go out the back and stuff. So. Okay, so today I'm with Ben Axford, and what would you say your job role is now?
Private chef now.
Private chef now.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you get into what you do?
It was a very convoluted route. So I started out on a completely different path. I went to uni and studied law, finished my degree and decided actually I didn't want to practice law. So I didn't really know what to do next. So I thought, well, I'll get into sales because, I'm thinking at least I'll make some money while I'm thinking what I want to do.
Yeah.
Ended up in telecoms and selling data networks at a time when it was really booming. So there was the sales side was relatively easy.
Yeah.
And
what sort of year was that?
That was 95.
Okay.
Yeah. And then eventually ended up headhunting for that industry and running a small office in London, which again was a really lucrative role. And I quite like to do my own thing. And the guys that owned the business, they had an office up in Cheltenham, but they wanted somebody to run the London office. And they pretty much let me do my own thing as long as the team brought in the targets and hit the targets. Nice. So it was quite a nice level of freedom to be able to do that. Then I was at a point where I'd kind of hit some really good milestones within the business, and I've been doing it for a number of years, and I kind of started to lose the enthusiasm for it. I didn't know what my direction was. So I kind of bought a book on meditation. I teach myself to meditate, and I'll get a sign. And I did that for a few months. This is bollocks. I'm not. It's not getting me anywhere. And then I was on this tiny Greek island on a pretty much deserted little cove, and it came to me as clear as if somebody had written it on a sign and walked past. And I thought, I love food. Why don't I do a career in food? But because I'd come from quite an academic background, often those vocational type of opportunities aren't really kind of ever spoken to you about or presented to you as an opportunity. And that was when it first started. And so it took a little while for me to kind of pluck up the courage to basically leave the headhunting job and the expense account and the lovely sports car that the company provided me with and the very nice salary. And I had a mortgage on a property on a flat in London at the time. So but I took the leap. There was somebody around the corner who'd been in finance in the city, and he'd given it all up to start this really kind of cool coffee shop before cool coffee shops were really a thing. And he said, sometimes you just got to jump and hope, trust that you're going to land somewhere good, without knowing what the exact plan's going to be. So I left the headhunting role and started looking for businesses to buy. But I knew it was going to be in food, but I didn't know kind of what format it was going to take.
Okay.
And that took quite a long time, and I was hemorrhaging money because obviously I'd left the job, had a mortgage.
Yeah.
People would go, "Oh, do you want to go out this evening?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't have to get up tomorrow morning." So, and it was London, so it was expensive. So eventually, then I ended up doing. I went and did a ski season to just buy myself a bit of time to think, and rented my property out. Came back and then saw. That there was this property going in Cheltenham, and I knew because I'd lived overseas when I was younger. London and Cheltenham were the only places I knew, and the reason I knew Cheltenham was because the company that I'd worked for in headhunting had started up there, and so I travelled up there quite a few times, knew people from the business there. So I thought, well, I'll look there as well because I'll have a few people that I know.
Yeah.
And with my family still living overseas, it would be nice to have a bit of support if you were starting a new business. So I came across a business for sale up there, but it had just gone, and the agent said, actually, we've got another business coming on in Cheltenham if you're interested. Described the business. I knew exactly what it was. He said, look, it's failing, it's not making any money, but if you're interested, I said, I know what business it is, I'm definitely interested. It was just a gut feeling. I'd never worked in retail before, I'd never worked in food before. I'd never run my own business before, and I hadn't really got a clue about what to do, but I just had this gut feeling that was the opportunity, and it was a cheese and wine shop, primarily cheese. And they needed to sell quite quickly because they needed the money to expand. They had another shop in Bath, and they needed the money to kind of expand their export business. So I saw the property. So the agent told me as soon as it came on the Thursday. I saw the property on the Saturday. The owners happened to be in London on the Tuesday. Met them. And the end of that week, I made an offer for the full asking price as long as they took it off the market, and they did, and that was that. And it was went through, and that was kind of my first entrance into food.
So, what did you buy when you bought the business?
So it was the goodwill,
and
it was the fixtures and fittings, and then the ongoing lease.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So, and that was the cheese factory, wasn't it?
The Cheeseworks.
Sorry. Yeah. What did it? Yeah. So, what did it look like when you bought it, and then what did it look like, say, a year or two down the line?
Well, when I got it, it was all still paper based, so there was no real records. What I hadn't realised when I first bought it as well is that most of your profit is made in the 3 weeks leading up to Christmas. So a big chunk, if you get that right, then you can make, it makes a really nice year. If you get it wrong, you can either be, that, and getting it wrong can either be not buying enough product and therefore not making enough profit, or buying too much product. And because you do, we do, on the biggest day there, you could do 6 weeks turnover in one day.
Wow.
Versus the rest of the year, which was the 23rd was always the biggest day of the year. So there was no records to go on, not even ordering for normal times of the year. It was just all paper based, and it was all a bit scratty. We had to sort through all the products before we took it over, because we've taken over some of the stock and say, look, a third of this is out of date or coming to be out of date. So there was no real great stock control there.
No.
And it was run a bit kind of, it wasn't run really that, like a tight business. There was so getting to grips with that, and then also getting to grips with managing staff in a very different way, because I'd managed staff in London in the headhunting who were on very good salaries, had kind of a lot of responsibilities, and had contracts that they that had quite long notice periods on in some cases. So I was then going to a situation where I was employing people where you couldn't pay them much more than the minimum wage, where they could just walk out from one day to the next and find a job, two doors down. But at the same time, you had to. It took about 2 months to fully train somebody up to know all the products in the shop, to know all the stories behind the cheese, to know what they tasted like, to know all the other products that were in the shop. It wasn't just cheese. So that was a completely different challenge, along with all the other stuff of learning about how to run a business, essentially. And I decided I was going to teach myself the accounting as well, because I wanted to be on top of that. So it was a hard challenge at the beginning. As I say, when I took it over, it was practically making no money. I think it was a couple of £1,000 profit a year.
Okay.
So I had a gut feeling I could do better. And it's still, first year made a profit, bigger profit than what they'd made. I wasn't sure how their figures came to what they were, but we did better.
Yeah.
I say we. Well, it was me and I always say we when it comes to the businesses, because it was not just I owned it. Yes, but there was a team. I couldn't do it without the other people. I made some horrendous mistakes the first year. I cringe at some of them.
Do you want to disclose some of them? Or?
Well, I mean, certainly the Christmas period. It looked like probably a Russian supermarket in the height of the Soviet era. At one point, there was like three different cheeses on there. When we stocked 100. So I was sending taxis because I hadn't realised the volume and how quickly it had moved. So I was sending taxis out to cheese suppliers and farmhouses around the West Country. And they were coming back going, "Why have you made me transport? My car stinks." Because I needed to get it there quick. I hadn't got time to go, "Oh, can we sort of courier out?" And and at that time I didn't have an internet side of the business, so I hadn't got a tie-in with a courier anyway.
No.
That was a bit cringeworthy. Sometimes I think I'd probably expected a little bit too much of the staff, because I'd been in a business where you ask somebody to do something and it's done. Yeah. Whereas it was. I didn't realise, and I guess you've probably got to take the lessons from the big companies that employ lots of. They have a manual, and they make it very clear and concise what happens. So kind of even training them and talking them through it is not enough. You need to reinforce that with a handbook, so that they know the standards and on what's expected of them. And I had some great staff, by the way. I'm not saying that they were, they were all not up there, but there were trials and tribulations with staff over the time as well, because I think sometimes they don't view that job necessarily as anything particularly long. Some did, but most are looking at it as an interim, and they're not. That doesn't necessarily always bring the dedication that you would hope.
No.
So those are some of the challenges. Dealing with some of the suppliers, I didn't realise that. For some of the small cheese producers, some of the farmhouse operations, it was kind of like you had to almost sweet talk them into giving you some of their quota, because they were in demand. And I hadn't realised that. That blindsided me at the beginning. I remember calling up. I won't name the cheesemaker, and I said, after getting some of your big truckles of cheddar, he goes, "Oh, we don't know about that." And I was like, "Oh, how come?" Well, and eventually I managed. Actually, we had been allocated some of the quota that had been allocated to the previous business, so there was already a quota allocation.
Okay.
But I'd changed the business name. I had to change the business name when I bought it, so I branded it as my own. But yeah, there were things like that, little things that you didn't realise, and it was quite a closed kind of little community as well.
Okay. What, from the customers or the staff?
The cheese. Oh, also, I suppose the customers as well. I'd been living in London, and the customer base in Cheltenham is very different.
Yeah.
I suppose the pace of life as well. I remember when I was working for the headhunting company, I'd come up and we'd gone to get a sandwich for lunch, and I started eating it on the way back to the office, and they went, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I've got stuff to do, haven't I?" That kind of London pace. And they were like, "No, we'll go back. We'll sit in the staff kitchen, and we'll sit down and have a cup of tea, and we'll eat the sandwich like civilized people." And I was like, "Oh." So just things like that whole pace of life. And what I hadn't realised as well when I bought the shop is that I understood very quickly that it needed to be not just a financial interaction, because if it was just a financial interaction, then they might go and get their cheese from a supermarket or that's got a cheese counter. I mean, we did offer a wider selection, but it had to be a social experience and also an educational experience. But what I didn't realise, and I probably didn't really feel it until I left and I got all these cards, is that it was really a part of the community. And people, for them, coming in on whichever the day they did, it was part of their routine, it was part of their ritual. And it wasn't just about the cheese. It was about the experience and walking into an independent food specialist. And that really struck me when I left, with all these cards and people saying that they were going to miss me. I just thought I was I didn't realise that, and so there's lots of revelations over the time. It was a big learning experience.
What would you say So you say you've learnt a lot. What would you say has been the sort of difference between going to university and learning in that kind of way, and then obviously learning essentially on the job by buying your own business and doing it that way? What's kind of been the difference?
Well, I suppose for me personally, I do like to throw myself in at the deep end, and I like a challenge because it makes me feel alive. I get way more focused when I'm under pressure. If I'm just dilly-dallying along, I'm probably more liable to make mistakes and stupid decisions. But when the pressure's on, it makes me focus intensely. I think because I suppose now when I went to university, you didn't, there weren't the fees like there are now. I was lucky in that respect. And I'd probably say to somebody, if they were going to university now, to really reflect on whether they could get more benefit of going into business earlier on and gaining 3 years of business experience on the job.
Cost.
Yeah, because there are some professions where you have to go to university. Yeah. And law would have been one of them. Doctors, engineers. There are some, but there are other things business-wise where I don't think necessarily you need all that knowledge up front.
No.
Now, you may eventually want to go and do an MBA if you want to rise to the echelons, but I'm not even sure then sometimes, because if you've got the nous and the ability, I don't always think that you need to go and do the official courses. I mean, some of the stuff we come on to later, I mean, I've never been trained officially in them. Yeah. But I can do them, or I've done them very competently.
Yeah.
So I think, especially now with you can go on YouTube. When I started my chocolate business, I didn't take a chocolate lesson at all. I looked on YouTube. I read some books.
Yeah.
Experimented, and so
and ultimately the market is what is the deciding factor, isn't it? Yeah. So if people don't buy your product, then you've not got a good product. Whereas, and I think a lot of people put the gap in front of them. They're like, oh, I need to go and do a course in how to make whatever, or pottery, or whatever they want to do. And it's like, well, why don't you learn it yourself and then let the market decide if you have got a good product that they actually want to buy?
I mean, I think as long as you are diligent to some extent in your research of what's out there and what's going to be in demand, and where you sit, because you don't always have to be like, I'm going to be a premium product. You can be a mid-range product and probably do even better. But you've got to know where you sit. Yeah. How you compare against the people that you're going to be on a price level with. Yeah. And then aim for that. And as long as you're diligent in your research for that, and then diligent in how you run your business. I mean, I think the integrity side is, for me, it's really big, is to have a level of integrity. Whatever level you're at, make sure there's the integrity there, that you do what you say. Whatever you supply is of the quality that you're saying it is.
And you're not bullshitting. Yeah. Like, your customers saying, oh, it's this, and then it's not. So how did you get onto the chocolate?
So I had the cheese shop, and there was I entered MasterChef, BBC MasterChef. Ended up getting to the final, getting narrowly pipped to the post, and on the back of that, people started asking me to cook meals for them. Okay. I've had that private dining business now since 2007. Okay. Yeah, when it aired. And I was making chocolates at the end of the meals, and then I put some chocolates together for a friend of mine for his birthday, and he went, "You've really got something here. You've got to do something with it." And that was the first seed of it. So I'd grown up in Brussels. Yeah. So I'd grown up on the really good independent, the really good Belgian chocolate companies when they were independently owned or Belgian owned still. They've all been sold out. Godiva and Leonidas, and they've all been sold out to big conglomerates now. But when they were, all the chocolates used to be fresh. They have 7 day shelf life. You'd buy them in a shop, and instead of taking a bottle of wine around to somebody's house, you'd take a box of chocolates. In a lot of cases, it's very much more the tradition, and the idea that chocolates, they're made with fresh ingredients, fresh cream, fresh butter, and that they don't sit around on a supermarket shelf for 9 months before you buy them, or at home in the cupboard for 9 months. Yeah, it's something to be enjoyed, relatively swiftly. So so my mate sowed the seed of it, and I thought, okay, I'll do a bit of research. Bought lots of other chocolatiers' chocolates. Went back to Brussels, where most of my family still live, and then went around a lot of chocolate shops there. My sister actually knew somebody who ran their own small chocolate business, so spent a day with her, and she was really generous with her time and knowledge. And then came back and just started doing my research as how I was going to put it together, and then started experimenting. I was fortunate because I'd had the cheese business. I knew a lot of the local restaurateurs, so I asked one of them to get a load of people in from their database that I didn't know, because I didn't want it to be people I knew. And then I put I had I think about 14 different flavors, split them into a couple of groups, gave them loads of chocolates and loads of feedback forms. And the draw was come and taste some free chocolate. So there's lots of people turned up. So about 40, I think, nice. To come and do it. So it's got some really good feedback from that. And then that was kind of the start of it. I thought, yeah, okay, we'll do something with it.
What kind of feedback were you looking for?
Really based on the flavour initially.
Okay.
So I wanted to see how, because I wasn't doing any. I mean, I wasn't the only one that was doing slightly innovative stuff, but. I was one of only a handful, so I was doing some things where there were water-based ganaches as opposed to using it's called water-based ganache. So basically, you're using fruit juices or other things to flavour the chocolates as opposed to the cream, so you get a far purer flavour in some cases. I wouldn't say that I didn't use cream in other cases. I was doing flavours that were maybe not as accessible for some people. So, I mean, passion fruit and basil, which some people actually in the tasting were like, oh, and then when they tried it, they were like, oh, okay, I get it. And I said, people go, oh, basil, and they think of it as a savoury herb, but I was going like, well, you have mint with lamb, and you have mint in desserts. You have, you have apple with pork, but you have apple in as a dessert. So basil works really well with very acidic flavours like lime and passion fruit, pineapple, but it also works really nicely if you've got some vanilla ice cream, just dice a little bit of basil up, throw it on top, fresh basil, and it works really well together. So there were a few things like that I was doing. I was doing like pineapple praline with lemon and things like that, which that's not that left field or anything. So it was just to get a feel of how people would experience it, and whether I was going to need to do a hard sell on it or not. And there were a couple of flavors we cut out as well. That people weren't quite ready for.
How many did you start with when you initially launched?
So I think it was 12.
Okay,
yeah.
So quite a few.
Yeah.
Why did you pick those 12?
So there was a big trend in salted caramel.
Okay.
It was kind of probably just starting back then. Whereas now everything is salted caramel. I mean, even the big names have got salted caramel in their range. But back then it was kind of quite a novel thing. Even though it goes back, I mean, in France they've been doing it. In Brittany, I think they've been making toffees with seawater, so salted toffee for probably centuries. So it's not a new thing. But it was kind of new in the market. So I decided I was going to do a traditional salted caramel, and then I thought, well, you can bring the flavour changes just by using different sugars. So I did one with muscovado and one with palm blossom sugar.
Oh, nice.
And different salts as well.
Different what?
Different salts.
Okay.
So those were the initial ones. I wanted, and then it was about when you're putting a box together to have a balance of fruity ones.
So it wasn't just like one bar.
So there were boxes of filled chocolates.
Yeah.
And I did do individual. So I did a selection box which was just the caramels for those that were massive caramel addicts. But I did ones where there was a mix. So I named one. One was called the Silk Road because it was basically things that you would have. You know about the Silk Road, the kind of trade route. So it was things that you would have had along that could have come from that route.
Like a little journey.
And then what was I can't remember what the other one was called. So there was two different selection boxes, and then there was the big selection where you got 24, and it was 2 of each flavour.
Oh, cool.
I can't remember what the other box was called.
Why did you go for a box rather than like a bar of chocolate?
So the filled chocolates are kind of, I suppose, I suppose it's seen as like the full display of skills within chocolate. Chocolates that you eat, as it were, as opposed to chocolate sculpture or anything. It's seen, and in Belgium they're called praline, which has a different meaning in some places, but praline is basically a filled chocolate. It was invented by Neuhaus, which is a Belgian company. They invented like the filled chocolate. So that way as well, you get to deliver so many different flavors. In bars there's the unless there are such things as filled bars, but most bars have got what's called inclusions in them, and an inclusion has to be essentially a moisture free item, because as soon as you put moisture into a chocolate bar, you can't temper it then. So it will basically ruin the temper of the chocolate. The temper is what makes it snap and shine. So you can be a lot more playful with your flavors, and that's what interested me, the creative side as well.
So did you go into restaurants, or was it direct to consumer?
No, so the original plan was I had when I had the cheese company, in the last 2 years, I started internet sales, and this is back in 2007 when there was there was no Instagram.
I don't think Facebook was around,
and Twitter. Facebook was quite nascent. It was it was not people didn't use it anywhere near as much as they.
You didn't have it on the mobile phone, did you?
No. Oh no, not at all. I mean, I can't even remember. I don't even think.
Definitely wasn't 3G. I think it was like.
Yeah, I don't even think you had internet on your phone back then.
No. Or you did, it took so long to load.
I'm a late adopter as well, so they might have, but I certainly wasn't on my phone.
No.
I still had Nokia 3310. In fact, it was only when I bought the chocolate company, and my stepdad said to me, I got this package arrived from Amazon, and I opened it. I didn't know who it was from initially, and I was like, I mentioned it to my mum, and she goes, oh, hang on. And stepdad came on the phone. He goes, oh yeah, I thought you need a proper phone now that you've got your chocolate business. And it was a Samsung that actually had a screen that you could actually look at the internet on. But I think he bought it initially so I could take pictures more.
Oh,
easily.
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, it seemed pretty ancient now, but at the time it was initially the plan was, so when I'd started the cheese business, the last 2 years I'd had a website. It had gone tremendously well, and the company had got us to like between number 1 and 3 on a lot of the keywords that we asked for very swiftly. So I thought, wow, they're bloody amazing. How many years later it was since I sold the cheese shop? Is it 5 years later or so when I started the chocolate business? And so I asked them to do the website and to do the SEO on it, and the kind of either the market had advanced or they'd been left behind, one of the two. And so my initial plan was to sell direct to the consumer, and I thought with what they've done with the cheese works, if they can get me to anywhere close to that on the chocolate, it'll be crazy. Well, no, I don't even think I appeared on page 5, let alone page 1. So that plan very rapidly wasn't generating enough income. And again, he didn't have the advantage of Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or anything like that to really push it. And nobody's really pushing stuff on Facebook either then.
No. It's a very friend-to-friend platform,
It wasn't at all businessy. So I thought, well, I have to do something different. So I thought we were going to wholesale. But the branding that I had for direct-to-consumer wasn't really suitable for wholesale. I needed something punchier. So then I had to completely do a whole new packaging. And then I had to think about, there had to be some element of shelf life as well. Because the direct-to-consumer, I'd fill the boxes up per order. But for retailers, they want some form of shelf life on there. You can't say, well, it's only going to last a month. So I had to redevelop other products and other flavors. So we did do bars then. And I developed some truffles, which I'd originally started developing before, but they're very fortuitous. They used coconut oil instead of cream or butter. I'd started using coconut oil because I wanted to see how it melted on the tongue and what the flavour difference would be, because dairy basically coats your mouth and you get flavour drop off, and it doesn't deliver flavours as cleanly as coconut oil did. But the nice little bonus was that coconut oil actually means that you can have a longer shelf life on it. I didn't, and also back then veganism wasn't a thing. But my dark chocolates were all vegan, but we weren't selling it as vegan chocolates. I didn't realise that at the time. Maybe I should have hopped on that bandwagon early. So we did that and some chocolate bars. Did some kind of a few other products. But and so then I went down to like specialty food fair to sell my wares. And at the beginning, I only had the 3 boxes of truffles, and it's called Wicked and Wonderful, which I thought was like chocolate in 2 words. And the packaging all nice with like gold foil embossed or debossed logos and stuff. But I only had the 3 truffle packages, and I went down to specialty food fair. I had the smallest stand that you could buy because it cost a bloody fortune.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really got kind of the response because I thought, well, the packaging looks really good. I thought.
Where did you do this? Sorry.
So there's specialty food fair at Olympia, so it's a trade show.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'd gone through, it's 3 days, and I hadn't really got the kind of response. A little bit of interest, and and I was literally packing up, and this woman came out, and I'd started to put stuff in. I was taking the display down.
Yeah.
And she tasted a few, and she said, "Oh, I'm really interested. I love the packaging." Asked me lots of questions and stuff, and I said, "Oh, you exhibiting as well?" She said, "No, I'm a buyer and stuff." I said, "Oh, who are you buying for?" She goes, "Oh, Harrods." She had her label turned around because obviously she didn't want people kind of coming and pestering her because so I was like, "Oh, right, try play it cool."
Yeah.
So she gave me her card. And that took quite a while, actually. So the process to get in took quite a while, but they took the product,
Nice.
and that was my first reference customer. And I just thought, they'll take a little bit. Actually, they shifted quite a bit.
What do you think drew her to your stands, the product, and do you know what I mean? Like, because obviously she's going to be looking around. So there's going to be thousands, probably hundreds, should I say, of people trying to sell her on chocolates or whatever. Why do you think she went for yours over others?
Well, I think first of all, it's got to be shelf appeal.
Yeah.
So the look of your product for them, particularly for them, has to look premium. I think what happens, and this happened in both the cheese and I've seen it on lots of other artisan products. It's probably changed now because people get a lot more exposure on Insta to what products look like, and I think product packaging, product photography is probably a lot easier these days.
Yeah.
But back then, a lot of the small producers, they might, like when I had the cheese shop, they'd come in, people would come in and say, "Oh, I've got this product and stuff," and they leave it to me. I thought the product tastes pretty decent, maybe we'd stock it, but the packaging, like honestly, it looks like it's a school fair or something, or something you'd knock up because you had to raise a bit of raffle money for something. And I'd feed that back in a very gentle way to them. But some people wouldn't, it'd be just like home printed labels, and I just thought I can't charge what your product should be charged out at when it looks like that. So I think the first thing was obviously the brand name and the look of it. The second thing, obviously, then it has to deliver on flavour. And I think she liked both. What they did say to me though was that we can't just take you with 3 products. You need a bigger range.
Okay.
So that's when I started developing the bars, and
cool.
we did Easter eggs for them as well. So yeah, that really expanded the range, and that's what drove it. And then we started to get, got farm shops and delis. We supplied into, my name escapes me now, Phoenix, as well. We were asked by Fortnum to do some white label stuff, but they didn't want to pay the money either. We did all the development work for them, and they tell you what they were going to pay, and we're like, no. Make any money? You're crazy.
So did you do the design and packaging yourself, or did you get someone to do it for you?
No, so I'd actually found, so I don't know how I came across it. There was a company, because I've been playing around with what I was going to call. I had sheets of A4 of name and just scribble, like let the mind flow, see what comes out, and nothing was really sticking for me. And then I'd seen a company, and all they'd done was like do a bit of a design for their corporate gifts at Christmas. So it was only like an internal thing almost, just to give to their customers as a bit of kind of an experiment, and it wasn't really what they were into. And I saw it and I thought, that looks great. So I contacted them and I said, look, I really like what you've done there. Are you going to use that commercially or not? And they said no. I said, oh well, would you be interested in selling the name
Yeah.
And then doing some photography, because I like the photography they'd done just for there.
Oh, cool.
Because they'd done it as like a case study on their website. And they said, yeah, which I was quite surprised by. So they basically had the initial designs. They gave me not the design of the packaging, but the logo design. And then I had a friend who she'd worked for quite a lot of retailers, and she did the design work for me.
Oh, nice.
And did a really tremendous job, actually.
Yeah.
So I was pleased. The next problem was the packaging. Oh my God.
Okay.
You probably know a bit about packaging nightmares, don't you?
Yeah. So, they never go the way that you want it to.
Packaging was probably my biggest nightmare in the chocolate side of things. And a thing that can be ridiculously expensive if you don't know what you're doing, or unless you've got a feel for it. And I'm sure there are some people who've got. I mean, I remember getting quoted for the chocolate boxes that I wanted to make.
Yeah.
There was one company in London, because I getting them from, shipped in from China for the volumes I was looking for was not practical.
The shipping cost alone is like extortion.
There's some company in London, they quoted some ridiculous amount for actually just doing the design, not the graphic design, but just the design of the box, which was quite simple. And then they were quoting something like £4.50 a box. I was like, it's just some it's cardboard coated in some very nice paper.
Yeah.
But £4.50.
Yeah.
That's way more than what the chocolates are going to be that I put in there.
Yeah.
The markup would end up being ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's some people that go for that.
Yeah.
And then when it came down to doing the truffle boxes, also the other problem is if you're having rigid boxes, the space that takes up.
Yeah.
I made a very when I started off with my original brand, which was Benjamin Chocolatier, I had these large boxes which fitted the bottle of champagne in, and had a drawer that pulled out. And I hadn't really realised when I'd ordered them the amount of space it was going to take up. So my garage ended up being filled literally floor to ceiling. Right, you could barely get into the garage, but it was literally floor to ceiling. There was like millimeters to spare. There's some storage space like in the eaves. That was all packed with it. It was everywhere, like spare wardrobes and stuff. Because I didn't realise how much space it was going to take up when So packaging was probably the biggest nightmare. When it came to the truffle packaging, in the end I ended up designing it myself, because people kept saying, "Oh, you can't do this." I wanted a flat pack that'd pop up and it was easy to put together, and the way I wanted it was quite specific. So in the end I solved the problem myself. So I just started cutting pieces of paper out and going, right, we can do it. And then if you break it down like this, then it can be cut out on and done really quickly. The same with the chocolate bars, actually, because I wanted an actual kind of little box, but that was obviously fold, that came to me flat. And I ended up getting it done by a greetings card manufacturer.
Okay.
Because they had the same, they could do the full embossing or debossing, whatever it was. They could print both sides. And they had all the cutters and stuff, so it didn't matter. You just had to pay for the cutters, the new shape of cutters. But and they had a really quick turnaround, and they weren't far away from me. So
So how did you manage to get the cost down of the packaging and stuff? And
shopping around first of all. They weren't always the first people that I went to that I chose. I had a sense of where it should be. I had a sense of what I could afford for it to be, for me to then get to a price point that was going to be acceptable to the wholesale.
What were they selling at?
What the
chocolates? So
originally the boxes of truffles, were they? The price obviously moved up over time, but I think they were probably $7.95 or something.
Okay.
For a box of 9 truffles.
Yeah.
The bars were three something, $3.50 or $3.95.
Okay. So you managed to get the cost down and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you got that. Like when I told somebody about I think we got the cost down for these, the chocolate box things. The bars. Sorry, the bar packaging down to, I think it was about 14 pence.
Okay.
Which, for what the quality that it was, it was slightly textured card as well, so it had a real premium feel. printed both sides,
Yeah.
and then foiled logo on it as well. So, and considering I wasn't doing like hundreds of thousands, the volume was relatively low, so that price, I mean, when I told some people, and they were just like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
But you just have to search it out, and you have to be determined. And
but that's because I think you went and did it yourself as well, and you said like, here's what I can do, so they don't really have to do the work, if you know what I mean. Like you've kind of done it for them, haven't you?
And there are you if you find the smaller businesses, I mean, you will go to that one like in London that was doing luxury packaging for loads of companies, but you have an initial field to go, no, £4.50 is too much. Okay, if I'm selling a watch at £80 or £90, maybe, but even then I'd go £80-90, £4.50. A bit too much on the packaging.
As a percentage.
So I think if you've got an instinctive feel for where it should be, but don't just go to one company.
No.
Choose lots of different ones, and choose maybe the big, well-known ones, and then choose some of the smaller ones and see what comes in, and think outside the box. I mean, like the greeting card manufacturer. It was only through a conversation with somebody else that I knew, whose parents had owned a greeting card manufacturing company, and I was saying about all these packaging problems, and she went, I wonder if a greeting card company could do it. And then I started looking at greeting card companies and seeing who would be open to talking to me. And some companies aren't open to talking to you. They will dismiss you out of hand, or you're not big enough for what they want to do. But you just have to keep
the next one.
Yeah.
So how important is in business? How important do you think it is to sort of talk to people and essentially tell people what you're doing? Because by the sounds of it, you say, oh, I knew someone, or I was speaking to someone, and then this happened. Like, how important do you think it is for people to sort of put their ideas out there and spread it into the world?
Oh, I think it's really important, because I think there's an initial feeling when you've come up with something, it's got to be really secretive, but most people haven't got, they're not looking to poach your ideas. No. But I mean, there are people out there, I'm sure, but most people haven't got won't take that leap to go and do their own thing. So if you're speaking to people that are already in business, for a lot of people, the security of having a salaried role within a company is that's what they enjoy. Yeah. For other people, I enjoy the freedom of running my own ship, but for most people, they don't. But they may have a quite a wide knowledge. They might be really outside the box thinkers that don't really get much opportunity to do that in their own role. So they might just relish the opportunity. Yeah. So I say the more people that you can bounce ideas off, the more that you will discover. And it might be just little tips and tricks. I'd spoken to somebody, going back to the Harrods thing, I'd spoken to somebody that had mentioned, I don't know if it was with Harrods or some other big company, they said, what they'll do is they'll when you tell them their price, they'll do a discount when they pay you. They discount themselves for paying you on time or something. So they give themselves a discount. So I'd automatically thought, when I go into Harrods, I need to make sure my pricing's a bit higher in case they do. And sure enough, they did. When they pay you on time, I think it was a 5 or 10% discount. 5% discount they give themselves for paying you on time, for paying you according to the terms. Yeah. So, bravo. They did always pay on time, which was a good thing. There's some don't. So it's just little things that you learn like that that stick, and it might not always be relevant to exactly what you're doing, or it might not even be relevant to that particular business. Yeah. Or you might be able to pass it on to somebody else, because it's not just about keeping it for yourself. I wouldn't want anybody to kind of make some of the mistakes I've made. And if I can help somebody, if there's somebody that's got a business or starting something up and they come to me, I'm like, well, give them all the knowledge they want. Yeah. Especially, we're talking about the packaging side of things. Yeah. God, I could save people hundreds of hours. The time I put in and the lessons I learned and the errors that you make on that side. To share that with somebody else, be invaluable. So it might not necessarily be, and then they can impart something to somebody else, and it all comes full circle eventually.
How do you think people can cultivate sort of relationships like that, where they feel like they can speak to people?
I think it's about not having the fear of appearing silly, or I think that's the fear of it's the imposter syndrome again. It's like, I'm starting this business, and then I'm going to ask some questions. It might make me seem like I'm not competent to start this business. But that's the whole thing. You're starting the business and you don't know all about it. No. And you're going to have to learn. And even when you've been in the business for a while, you still have to learn. so it's suspending that level of maybe embarrassment or fear that you're going to appear like either an imposter or somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, because most people, if you ask for help, are going to be really generous. Most people's natural instinct when they're asked for help is to do as much as they can for somebody, and they're more than willing. And especially when it comes to small independent producers, most people, the vast majority want to see you succeed. There'll be a few jealous types who just like, and in a lot of cases it's because they are actually slightly envious that they haven't. Maybe they do want to take that leap of faith and go and do their own thing, but there's something keeping them back,
or they've got their own imposter syndrome.
But I'd say 95% of the people I'd spoken to, probably more, always really generous with their time and thoughts and input. And sometimes you'll get input that you don't want. Sometimes people will say stuff. I suppose you've got to know. You've got to have enough confidence maybe to know when to stand your ground and
push back,
and sometimes enough humility to go, actually they've got a fair point, I'm probably so your constant reassessment of what you're doing and yourself, and not getting lost in it and getting tunnel vision. That's probably really important, because as soon as you get tunnel vision, and you'll find this, I think this is the problem a lot of the big corporations are. They end up in an industry. They start talking in industry lingo. Some of these, you probably go to some of the. If you went to some of these conferences, it's almost like a different language, and they get locked into this kind of way of thinking, and this is the way we do something within the industry.
Yeah,
and it's very hard to break out of that. And you can do that within your own small enterprise, and you go, this, and you just get tunnel vision. But if you can step back sometimes and be really critical. Of what you're doing is not in like a harsh way to yourself, but be actually analyze it and go, okay, we've been doing it that way, but is there a better way to do it? And also, from if you're employing anybody, get their input as well. They're not just there to work for you. No. Get them involved in it. Ask them for feedback. See if there's a different way of doing things, because sometimes they'll come up with ideas and you're like, oh my god, they've seen it. It's new to them. They've seen it a completely different way. I'm trying to think of examples, but there have definitely been times, especially on the chocolate business, where I went, oh yeah, we could do that in that way, and that'd speed things up. Or that's a really invaluable resource that you've got there straight away if you're employing anybody. And it doesn't matter whether they've had any experience in what you're doing. No. In fact, sometimes it's better if they haven't.
How do you deal with the imposter syndrome when it does pop up and when it rears its ugly head?
Gosh, that's a tricky one, because I think it's probably only in the last 2 years that I've had my private dining business since 2007, and I keep all the lovely comments and cards and emails that I get. I very rarely reread them, which is probably something you should do to get a sense. And also maybe it's kind of like doing a bit of a stock take. In fact, this goes for in business as well. Even if you've been say you've been with a company for 9 years or something. When I was head, I would recommend to somebody every kind of 18 months, redo your CV. Not because you're intending on moving, but because you'll forget how many things you've achieved. Because some of them aren't always the tangible things like, I've hit this target or that target. But some of the things might be, actually I've negotiated a really tricky situation with a very difficult customer, and it's given me a skill set to know how to proceed in the future and not lose a customer when they've been extremely difficult. So I think the stock take is an important thing. It took me probably until the last 2 years to actually say I'm a chef, because I've never had any formal training. I got to the final of MasterChef. I've cooked for all sorts of people. I've had comments that people saying that it was better than Michelin star restaurants they've been to. So but then I'd still I'd go, is that really the case? But it happens more than once, and then you start to say, maybe I should start believing that. But it was when my friends didn't, Benny's a chef, and I was like, that's how I actually earn my living, exclusively since I sold the chocolate business exclusively. I mean, I've done it in tandem with the chocolate and the cheese business throughout those years, but it's only the past 3 or 4 years or so that I've done it exclusively. So it was really difficult to say that and to to say I'm actually a chef,
Yeah.
as opposed to it's just something I do on the side.
Yeah,
it's it's my living.
Yeah.
And I take pride in what I do now. But the imposter syndrome, I think, is you've got to look at it. Sometimes I remember thinking and I advise some of my friends now as well, whenever they've got problems in business, when they work for bigger corporations and they've got people above them and they doubt themselves. I say, how many people above you do you think are winging it in their jobs, or you think actually you could probably do better than them? Because in a lot of cases you see somebody that's higher up and you think some of them have got there by playing a political game, not necessarily because of their skill set. And so I say to them, well, if you know that you could do a better job in that position, why are you doubting yourself in your existing position? And there's proof that other people are actually imposters and they don't even know that they're imposters. But it is a tricky one to deal with.
Most of the time people are just winging it, whatever level they're at. You always look up and go, he's achieved this or she's achieved that in business, and half the time they're still winging it. And they're still thinking, oh God, am I going to make it? Is it going to work? And
I can tell the people that are really winging it because
why? How? What do you think?
They try and use way more technical terms than is necessary. They'll try and baffle you with jargon, and they'll be really super adamant about stuff.
What, like their idea is the right way, and
and they'll say, this is the way to do it, like as if it was like some knowledge that they built up over centuries.
And that old scroll.
That always makes me. I think the real and by the way, I'm not saying I'm anywhere near the level, but the really interesting and what I think are probably the most successful individuals that I've come across are the ones that are still really humble, still seek your opinion, even though you might not be an expert in the field, are considerate, are curious, and ask more questions than they put out statements, as it were. And those are the ones that I think you can learn most from, and are probably people I'd be more willing to follow if I was somebody who was in that. I'm not good at following somebody's lead. That's why I've gone and worked for myself. Because I like the independence.
But I mean, you do follow other people's advice, like you know what I mean. Like you may not be suitable to taking other people's directions from a employment point of view, but you still go out there and actively seek people's advice. And so, did you ever have a mentor? Or anyone you would have seen as a mentor?
No, not really. I think that's probably what I missed a lot through. I go back. There's one teacher when I was at school who it was actually. So I'd gone when we moved to Brussels. My first 3 years were in the British School of Brussels, so all English speaking. Then my second 3 years we were over there, which was my first 3 years of secondary, was in a Belgian state school. And so I was learning French and then also Flemish and also Latin via the medium of French. It was quite a tricky 3 years. And then I moved my last 3 years, the second 3 years of secondary, the last 3 years of secondary, were in a European school where you do most of your classes in your mother tongue, and then you have an elective second language, which was me French, and then you have to do 3 classes or so in that. But because I'd done the 3 years of French schooling, basically. Well, my schooling was in French for the first 3 years of my secondary. I'd lost a lot. I hadn't developed any really of my English writing skills or my literature skills, etc. But I had an English teacher at the European school. So, English, as you take English here in British school, who kind of saw potential. He said, look, your essays aren't really hitting the mark. I was getting like 6 out of 10s for my essays, which he goes, there's a lot more in you. And so he spent time with me. And that's probably the only time I think that I've really had a mentor on that side. And basically I ended up getting kind of, 9 out of 10s. And so that really helped. But I think, I don't really, there's nobody else that really, this is going to be terrible if I've missed somebody out, but there's nobody else that really springs to mind. I've kind of, sometimes I probably should have sought out more advice than I did earlier on. Sometimes I've liked the jeopardy of jumping in really deep, and taking on stuff that I wasn't sure that I could do. My girlfriend bought a house recently, and not recently, a couple of years ago, and it's been a whole renovation project, extensions and everything, and I built a variety of things on it. I've done flooring and things like that, but she finally finished and put the carpets in last week and moved in, and I built a kind of walk-in wardrobe behind the bed, so it acted as kind of, and when it was finished and stuff, I thought, oh, it looks really good and everything, all the lighting, LED lights and stuff, and it's like a proper boudoir walk-in thing, big space, and then I thought to myself, what on earth was I thinking that I thought that I could do that? Like, when I look at it now, I was like, I was mad. I've never built anything like that before in my life. It needed a lot of structural stuff. It had all the electrics going through, and I was like, what the hell was I thinking? And if I'd have seen the finished product and gone, oh, can you? I was like, no way. Yeah. But sometimes you just have to go and take that leap. But I think other times, maybe there are times when I could have sought out more advice. Well, my seeking out of advice is often YouTube. Because there's so much resource on there. You can learn to do. I mean, I wouldn't teach myself to do electrics. We did get the electrician to do the final bit, so I just put the lights and stuff on. But I think maybe I should have. I should maybe ask for more help. That's probably my one big thing. I don't like asking for help.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a struggle.
Why do you think you struggle with it?
I don't feel like I want to impose on anybody.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to help other people.
Yeah. I'm a bit like that, yeah.
But, I just don't feel like I want to impose. But actually, when you ask somebody for help, for most people, it really makes them feel like they're valued, because if you're asking somebody for help, you're attaching value to them, that they that they're good, they have I say useful, but not in a using way,
like a purposeful sort of,
and for most people unless you're asking them to do something that's really crappy and for most people they're more than willing to lend a hand. And as long as you're not just a taker, then I don't think anybody minds that. But I hadn't realised for many years that actually asking somebody to help can actually be very beneficial to them, not just to you.
Have you ever wanted to do it in a partnership, or do anything in a partnership, or again, more you want to do it personally?
I did. So my brother and I, we started working on a project before I had the chocolate business, and my brother and I had kind of quite divergent professional careers. He'd gone very much down the route of so his first job was working for Stella in their HQ, and he ended up being product manager for it, and then he went on, I can't remember what the other job. Anyway, he ended up at Schweppes Gina as their marketing manager for 28 countries. He hadn't even really told the rest of the family about it. It was just I've got this job, and see
him at Christmas.
And we didn't know the extent of it until I didn't even know until we decided we were going to work on this project together, and we had to put our bios together. And I read his bio. I was like, hang on, so that you were bringing how much business over 28 countries, how many different product ranges, and what TV campaigns? I was like, what the hell? How did I not know that? And he was, he's young when he did it, and we were looking at. So it was the time when in the supermarkets there was lots of companies coming up and disrupting specific product sectors. So you had Goo that had disrupted the whole kind of dessert sector. Historically you'd had Häagen-Dazs who disrupted the ice cream sector, where they, before it was like walls in the, the Tupperware kind of cartons, and Haagen-Dazs had changed the consumption moment. They made made ice cream sexy, and Goo had done the similar thing for desserts. I don't know if it was at the same time, but some people like Higgidy have done the same thing for quiches and pies, and Pie Minster has done it for pies. So innocent for on the kind of fruit drinks side of things. So we thought, well, what area in the supermarket? Because he had this experience of working for big FMCG companies, we thought we can bring that to it. And so we looked at the biscuit sector and thought, there's nobody does really luxury biscuits. What brands we get? And most people's biscuit consumption was all around,
it's like tea and
digestives and stuff, and custard creams and stuff. And we thought, well, maybe there's a bit above there where you can go. It's not going to be a mega high priced item because it's still a biscuit, but that you can do something that's a luxury brand that stands out on shelf, that has different, more attractive packaging, that's seen as a bit more treaty.
Yeah.
So we did loads of research into it. I developed all the recipes. He's working a lot on the kind of brand identity, and then we started. Anyway, I'm digressing from the question, but so we were going to work together, and he's even though he's my younger brother, he's somebody who he's very reasoned. He's very good. He's very good on the people front. He's very good at the relationship building side of things. Very patient. Very, very thoughtful. And I thought, he's one of the only people I think I could work under if he said he wanted to take full charge. It was kind of a dual thing. Yeah. But saying that about your younger brother is quite a big thing. It was really fun. The project didn't. The problem we had, we actually found it. We'd gone to Lancashire. We found a manufacturer for our products, and they manufactured for other people. It was like a proper old school business. It was like walking back in time when we went there. But they manufactured for like Fortnum's and Harrods and stuff. And initially they were happy to do it, and then I think they thought, well, they're going to be too small fry. And then we had to look for another manufacturer, and we couldn't make the figures work because we were going to be selling into supermarkets, and we were going to be in at one point, until you start to get positive turnover, we reckoned we were going to be in like a £200,000 to £300,000 cash flow hole.
Wow.
And we thought, do we really want to take that risk? Because especially when supermarkets can just go from one day to the next, you've ramped up production, they go, actually not selling as well as we thought, see you later, bye. And you've got no leverage at all. So we went through the whole process, and it was really interesting. But he's probably one of the only people that I would partnered with. It would be nice to. It'd be nice to find somebody that I could really, that there was that real vibe and complementary skill set for a business. Do
you see yourself starting any other businesses?
Yeah.
Which? What?
Well, I've got two ideas. I don't know if they're so much businesses as more to kind of. Well, I hope they'd be revenue generating. But there's one around.
It's a good one when businesses are revenue generating, isn't it?
There's one about diet, which I'm actually doing. I'm prepping some stuff for at the moment, because essentially the whole calorie theory is based on a late 1800s. Late 1900s. So 18, whatever it was, 67 to 90 something concept, which is completely flawed in every facet.
It's like the calorie counting sort of thing, like.
So the calorie side of things is not actually, calories aren't really the important thing. No. And I've done this myself twice now. So once when I was in my early 20s, and I've just done it recently, where you can still eat as much as you want. There's a lot more science behind it. It's not just eat as much as you want, but still lose weight. So you can still. It's not a calorie deficit. You have a lot of people going, it's just calorie deficit. Now calorie deficit will lose you some weight in the short term, but over the long term, if you monitor it, you'll see that it's detrimental.
Yeah, you burn the different kind of fat, don't you? There's like the white fat and the brown fat.
Well, it's more about what the net result of it is, because if you were to go on just a calorie restrictive diet, you have, because your weight then loses, your calorie requirements then lower anyway. So you have to keep reducing, it's not sustainable. And then when you go back to normal, it's actually slowed your metabolic rate down. Yeah. So you actually then become heavier. Yeah. And then the second time that you go say, I'm going to diet again, then you have to reduce your calories even further initially
Yeah.
And then there only comes a point to what you can reduce it to. So then the third time, then you go back to a bit of normal eating, bang, up you go. And actually the most important thing in your weight gain or weight loss is your pancreas and how that releases insulin. And so it's about controlling that and controlling your blood sugar levels.
How can people control it?
So essentially what you eat. So the
good food, bad food.
I don't see it was like that, but there are things that will peak you in. So I'll give you on the very basic level.
Yeah.
People always go, they think cutting out fatty foods because fatty foods do not make you fat. If you were to take a block of cheese with the same calorific value, I'm still going to refer to calorific values, even though I don't, they have no bearing in the principle but so that people can have a reference point. So if you take a block of cheese and a packet of biscuits, the same calorific value. If you eat that block of cheese, you probably won't be able to eat as much because you'll feel sated a lot quicker, or you'll feel like it's a bit too much a lot quicker. And what happens is the cheese doesn't release, a hard cheese will not release very much insulin at all. So you can't actually stock most of that energy. So most of it is actually excreted. As soon as you have like a cracker with the cheese, or chutney with a load of sugar in, that gives you massive insulin spike. So then there is all that fat content that then and the calorific value of that fat content that then can be stocked by the body. Pack of biscuits, you'll go, wow, man, I could plow through this pack a bit. Well, if you like anything, I never, even when I wasn't doing this, I never used to have biscuits in the house because I'd eat 90% of a packet on the day I bought it. But you can plow through that packet with a cup of tea. And then,
easy.
Hour later, you're like, freaking, I'm starving, I need something else. And so it's because you've had this massive spike in blood sugar. Your body's gone held on to all of that. Massive drop in blood sugar. Then you're like, I need something else. And so you go in that cycle. What the basically, essentially, let's call it a blood sugar way of eating means that you end up with a far more even level of blood sugar throughout the day. That you don't have the mid-morning or the mid-afternoon drop. You need less sleep, generally less bloated. And you can still eat big volumes. So you don't ever feel like, oh my God, I'm starving hungry. So since August 18th, I started last year. I've lost over 2 stone. I've never once felt like, I'm craving or something. It reduces the cravings as well. So I'm not like, I used to be like, oh my God, a pizza and a beer or something, I don't like, I can't remember the last time when I thought, I really want a pizza, or so it reduces the cravings because you're not going in that kind of cycle of up and down, up and down, up and down. And you can still have, it's not like you can't have great stuff on it. You can still have really dark chocolate. I eat a lot of dark chocolate. You can have big meals. You can still have practically a full English as long as you're not having like the bread and stuff with it. And so there's lots of great things that you can have on it. It doesn't feel like a diet as such. It feels more, maybe a bit more lifestyle-y, but it's not a diet as such because you can eat as much as you want within the parameters of what it is.
What's stopping you from starting that?
I'm doing the research for it now. So because I want to make sure that all because I want to go back and explain more about the calorie theory. But also I want to know that I'm completely on top of the science, because I don't want to, tell something and then somebody come back and go. And the thing is, it is going to be, it is going to be not controversial because I'm not the first person to talk about it. I will be in the way that I do it, but because you get a lot of people now on the kind of reductive argument of it's just calorie deficit. It's just calorie deficit. It's not. It depends on what you eat. And calorie deficit can actually be, well, as we said, more harmful than it is beneficial over the long term. They've done that because it's a reductive, simplistic way of presenting it to people, and it's kind of going, oh look, I'm really simplistic and come with me and on whatever it is, Insta or TikTok, and buy my program or whatever. When actually is that what's really about? And a lot of people, they might go on that, but they don't really understand the fundamentals. If I asked most of those people, tell me about how calories were initially calculated, no idea. Do you want to know?
Yeah, go on.
They used to take, so it's in a bomb calorimeter it's called, they used to basically take a food item, and they'd place it in this canister that was suspended in water, and they would burn it till it was nothing, and then they would measure the temperature of how much the water had raised by. So calories effectively the raising the temperature of 1 litre of water by 1 degree.
Okay.
But that's not what your body does. Your body doesn't burn it like with a flame. They were burning it with a flame.
Yeah.
And also nowadays they don't do that. It's all based on notional values. So all sorts of things have a different effect on it.
Yeah.
But again, going back to the initial principle, and this was science done in like 18. Yeah. It was originally so it stemmed from them calculating stuff for combustion engines.
Okay. Try and get energy out of it. Literally
body,
energy.
Your body doesn't do that. It's absolute madness that we still rely on it. To be honest, it's so misleading.
Where like different food types go to different parts of the body, don't they? Obviously, protein gets synthesized differently, and sugar and fats and. Yeah, so you can't just go, a calorie is a calorie when in no way, shape, or form is it a calorie.
But you know, when you realise that that's what they used to do, you're like, sounds a bit medieval.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way you calculated it.
Yeah.
And so, to me, when I first learnt about that, I was like, this is madness, because even without knowing any specific science, I'm going, my body doesn't use a flame to burn it, and I know I have a waste product, and my waste product can be used to generate energy. So therefore, I haven't absorbed everything that I've because you probably use in some countries probably human feces, but in many countries they use animal feces to generate methane and other ways of like they dry it out and use it to burn on fire. So there's obviously an energy value still left in there. So your body's not doing what the calorie thing does. So you're like, okay, that's wrong in one way. But then also it only looks at input. It doesn't look at how processing. So the calorie theory only looks at what you've put in, but it doesn't look at how the system has processed it or what the system does with that. So as I was saying, something like a really sugary dessert is not going to be processed in the same way as a block of cheese and some crudités. It even though they might be on the calorie theory the same calorific value, it doesn't it doesn't make any sense. And you look at a lot of these so-called diet products and they all go low fat or this and that, and then you look at what else they put in there, and it's all it's all like sucralose and cornstarch and things that are actually really bad for you, and probably going to make you hungrier, make it more difficult. It'll break your willpower quicker.
So is this diet? So I try and eat like a minimal processed diet in terms of. I read a book called Salt, Fat, Sugar. It just scared me in the amount of food. Like, I think it's 90% of the supermarket is processed now. So there's obviously the fruit and veg section, and then the dairy section and the meat section, and that's about it. So would your diet be unprocessed, or would it?
Primarily, well, there's another benefit to unprocessed as well, is that one of the other important factors in how efficient your system is and maintaining, both health on a healthy weight level, but also on for your mental health as well and your overall well-being, is the diversity of your gut microbiome.
Yeah.
Which the more processed foods you eat, the less diverse your microbiome is going to be.
Okay.
And so that's a key, and that's also a key thing they believe in degenerative diseases as well. So there's very much there's a lot more science about the gut brain link and how actually the gut affects your brain and then your overall operation of your system. A lot more than people thought. And the thing is, there will be companies that jump on that bandwagon and then give you like the sugary, what the brand, some of those yogurt brands that do the little sugary drinks that say have got all the active
bacteria,
and actually
Yakult,
yes, things like that that aren't as great for you as what they're professing to be. So you will get people jumping on that side of it. And I think obviously people have got used to that kind of convenience way of eating, but you don't have to do a huge amount to just start diversifying your gut bacteria. And that will give you just an overall better sense of feeling, probably less susceptible to overall disease because you've got that diversity.
Plus, so they obviously design the food so it has a really nice mouthfeel, and which I think is so bullshit, because as soon as you start eating more natural food and then you go back to eating like processed food, I can't remember what pizza it was, but one of the frozen pizzas, and it's fucking disgusting. I couldn't eat it because it was just like bitty in my mouth. The cheese was horrible, and I was just like, no, I'm not eating this. But your flavour and your experience of texture and everything changes. So for most people, if you were to say, "Oh, eat a piece of toast with just some sugar-free jam on it without any butter," they go, "Oh no." Or even just eat a piece of toast, without anything on it. Yeah. But if you've got really good bread, okay, the first couple of times you eat it, you're not used to it, so you're like, and you're like, oh, it doesn't taste of anything. But then you start to realise, actually, no, if you've got a really good sourdough, or even just a really good, properly made wholemeal bread, and you can start to taste this has got flavour and this is interesting. And it's only because it's kind of like, I suppose we want to be hit by loads of different things, whether it be visually, orally, or gustatory. We want to be hit, or even for sense and stuff. You want to be hit with all these things, but as soon as you strip that away, you start to actually see the beauty in what's really there, and really experience flavour, and start to appreciate it a lot more. But you're right about all the processed stuff. I mean, it's just you look at things like some of the tin tomatoes have got sugar added to them. Curries, most of the curries have got sugar and cornstarch in. There's so much stuff. Even a meatball. But it's really easy to make.
Yeah.
Like a curry sauce is really easy to make. It takes a little bit of work and gets quite messy, but that's probably because I'm a messy chef. But I don't see why people are lazy. I mean, it's convenience, isn't it? That's ultimately what.
And also because as you say, that they've got these things in that make it kind of quite addictive, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go back to that, go back to that, go back to that. And by the way, there's nothing wrong about like going and having, if you're a bit rushed for time, going and having a ready meal occasionally. There's nothing wrong with that. You've got to take into account people's lifestyles and stuff. But actually, there's some things which are super, super quick to do. That you don't that you don't need even that much skill to do, and you can still have a lovely, quick, incredible, tasty meal, or just a teeny little bit of planning. Just a teeny bit, not a whole lot.
So we've gone on to a tangent. I like it. Do you track the blood sugar level?
No,
diet or not?
No, so you're not taking any particular measurements. I mean, there's been a few different people that have approached it in a few different ways, and I think sometimes it was generally misunderstood. That a lot of people saying, "Oh, you should cut out carbs completely." This doesn't. You do have your carbohydrates and your fats and your proteins. You eat them all in different combinations, but you don't track it, but the results are very evident to see quite early on.
Which are
one, the weight loss without any effort. And this is without any increase in exercise. And in fact, I've probably, because I've been busy with work, probably a slightly decrease in having in exercise. Immediately feeling less bloating, more energy. When I first did it, I was training 6 days a week. I was playing reasonably serious rugby down in London. Some days I'd have 2 training sessions. Well, I say 6 days a week. I was playing one of those days. So, but I only had 1 full rest day a week, and other times I was doing a double session. So sometimes I'd do weight training and then rugby training on the same day. And I started doing this diet because we had the reason I originally started it was because we had a bet between 4 lads that were going on a lads holiday from work, and it was who's going to get the 6-pack for the summer. they gave up. They all gave up on what they were doing after a month, and I carried on, and I got down to like 9% body fat, which for me is super low. And they
That's
were
hard though, isn't it?
It wasn't. It just just because you could still eat massive volumes.
Yeah.
But they were saying, oh well, you're not going to have enough energy to train and stuff. Actually, it was the opposite.
Yeah,
you felt more energized because your energy release, and you're not having these dips. You're not having the ups and downs all the time. So your energy is very stable. And then when it comes to exercising, it seems like, I don't know what the science behind it is at the moment, but it seems like the energy release from your system is a lot easier because your body hasn't been in this kind of constant yo-yoing.
Yeah.
So when it does come to you actually needing some energy, your body goes, oh, yeah, you can have this because you know, almost like you're rewarding you for.
Yeah.
And so, I found it very beneficial back then and even now.
How long ago did you do it?
So I did it when I was 20. Was I 23 originally?
Okay.
And then I went back to it. So August last year because it's my 50th coming up in August this year. So I thought that's a good target. So sometimes you need a target.
Yeah.
But I think I will. I'll probably. So there's a.
What's the goal like?
Initially, I've gone beyond my goal and my initial goal, so I've already hit that. But it was I was going to have a pool party for my 50th. I found out that the place I wanted to rent isn't going to be possible. But so I wanted to just be in incredible shape and then to carry that on. And actually now I've started to do it. I feel so much better on all different levels. Like as I was saying, less sleep, less bloating, no cravings. I think probably generally happier as well.
Yeah.
Just feeling like, just not feeling as sluggish and certainly for exercise. I mean, I've always been I've always exercised, but I found it. I box and I coach boxing as well, and I was laughing. I've had a few challenges. Some of the 20-something lads who reckon that they could outlast me in the ring, and the other week, one of them after our round, one of them was literally lying on the floor of the ring, and I was like, "Come on, we can do some more." And he's like, "No." So it has its benefits on that side as well.
Tapping out.
So yeah, I mean, so my initial goal was I started off at 112 kilos, and I wanted to get down to 98.
Okay.
So I've surpassed that.
Oh, nice.
So now there's new goals.
Yeah.
I think it'd be more like a looks-wise thing.
Aesthetic,
So it's not really a weight thing for me. That was a measurable target. So I think it's easier initially when you have a measurable target, maybe. For me, anyway. Not for everybody. But now it's more just like an aesthetic thing. And I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at, but I just think actually it's not hard.
No.
I'm actually enjoying the food because it's making me eat better anyway. Far more diversity, and also makes you more creative, I suppose, as well on the food side. So and also I'm kind of, because I'm thinking about then putting it out there more readily out there. Because I think it can help people, because there are obviously people who go, oh, we'll do the calorie deficit thing, and it's incredibly hard to just do that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna basically cut what I eat.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you're gonna feel hungry. Obviously it's gonna be difficult, and if you're still not eating the right things, there isn't all these additional benefits.
No.
And then you can't sustain that. It's unsustainable, and the more weight you lose, the less and less you have to eat. So, I think this. To put it out there to help people say, look, it's not actually difficult.
No.
Once you get into the routine and you know what to buy, it's not difficult.
No. How are you going to monetize it?
This is the thing I'm not very good at. I guess that initially it's just about putting a bit of information out there and stuff. Maybe there's programs, to do maybe a book, courses maybe, possibly then, because obviously of my being a chef, is putting together a lot more recipes that are easily accessible for people. Maybe there's a subscription thing on that. I'm not sure. I need to. That's I haven't really thought about that side of things. I've just thought. No. I think the content and the knowledge and stuff is really good. I think it'll be disruptive a little bit as well, because I know that on things like Instagram, I haven't really used TikTok yet, but Instagram and places like that as soon as you start to say there's a problem with the calorie deficit model, you'll have loads of people slinging mud at you.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be more than mud. It'll be, who's this idiot or whatever. Which initially I was balked at. I don't really like that whole kind of, but actually I think you probably need that these days. You probably need, you
need that, a little bit of polarization.
The polarization is probably positive in some ways. And I'm quite happy, and this is why I want to make sure, I know the science already, but I want to make sure I'm on top of it completely. Well, I'm quite happy to go back and say, look, I'm giving you facts. I suppose this sort of comes from the legal training, is you base everything on your solid premise, and that you remove ambiguity from it, and then you present it in as watertight fashion as you can. And so in that respect, that's what I want to make sure that I've got, because you'll have as you probably know these days, people will argue white is black and black is white, and people will just love to argue with you for the sake of it and call you.
No one ever wants to admit that they're wrong, so they kind of delve deeper into it and go, no, this is the way that it's done. It's how it's done.
And I never, I've had instances before, it might be comments on a rugby page or something, and I will stick to facts, and I say, come back with a good, don't call me an idiot or go, oh, you've no idea what you're talking about. Come back with a good counter argument, then we can talk,
have a discussion. But
and that's what I suppose that's what disappoints me so much about social media and modern life, is that people will do you down, but they don't come back and go, well, the reason I'm saying this is because, and here's my counter argument with my facts and my stuff. That, and okay, as long as they're proven and not something you just come off with from the top of your head. That makes it more interesting, because then you both learn sides, and I think it's also important to always examine the other side of an argument. To see, okay, could I present that other side of the argument and present it in a way that I could convince somebody about.
Favourable.
And so that, because then that makes you look at both sides, and it makes you pick holes in your own argument, which is what we were taught.
It's important, but a lot of people don't do it, and they look for the short term. And just see their side as the right side, especially politically. And do you feel like there's anything I've missed in this conversation? I feel like there might be a round two. It's been enjoyable, and I've enjoyed it.
I can talk for too long. That's
we are getting on to an hour and a half already.
Oh, good! Really? Oh, right. Okay. This is what happens when you work on your own. You get one out. Like there. Download.
Do you feel like there's anything I've missed?
No, I think we covered quite a lot, haven't we?
If people want to find out more about you, where can they go?
Primarily my private dining
chocolates, actually.
My private dining website, which is benaxford.com. Or on Instagram, it's Wonder Flavour. Wonder Flavour. Yeah. But there are a few chocolates I brought. If you'd like.
What are they? Just normal chocolates?
Or? No. That one is. Oh, they're quite soft now. They've been in a heated room. That one is a single origin chocolate. So there's 3 different types of chocolate bean: Criollo, Forastero, and Trinidad. Main types of chocolate bean. Criollo is probably one of the rarest and the lower yield ones. So this is a Criollo bean from 100% Northern Peru. There is a bit of sugar in there, because otherwise 100% is a bit too much. Northern Peru. Then we've got this one, which is dark chocolate and rosemary truffle. Looks a little bit like we won't say what it looks like, Hershey's Kiss. Then that one is caramelized white chocolate and miso. So kind of a riff on the salty element. Bringing the miso in. Then this one here is the one that it's one of my waiting staff absolutely adores these, so I always have to make extra when I'm serving them as petit fours. So this is a lime, white chocolate and golden rum fudge. And then finally we've got a deep roasted peanut and milk chocolate one. So there you go. You can have a little tuck in on those.
Deep roasted peanut.
Yeah.
Does it say a lot about a person which one they go for first? I didn't really pick this one.
Well, that's the peanut one.
Yeah, you can definitely taste the peanut, can't you?
So I do that. I often dress that with a little bit of freeze-dried corn on top. So you know the crunchy corn that you can have. So put a little bit of that on top. They work really well together, which is a little bit unusual combination, especially because it's
smooth though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like really smooth and doesn't have that like the aftertaste of I don't know, when you have something like normally like that, it's probably because it is processed and stuff, like the truffle type of stuff, and you get it kind of sticks in your mouth.
Yeah,
I don't feel
usually because there's loads of sugar added to it.
Yeah,
because sugar's a lot cheaper. So things like, I should be careful I say, but let's say there's a famous brand that started off doing some really nice chocolate-based desserts, and then they sold out.
Yeah,
and over time the company that bought them then has clearly changed the recipes and put way more sugar in. So that's a single origin one from northern Peru. So quite dark chocolate, little kind of red fruity notes on it, so they started to replace the high cocoa content stuff with sugar because sugar's cheaper than chocolate.
And they do that in a lot of food, don't they? So and they'll do it in diet food where it says reduce fat and all that, but then they'll pump it full of sugar
and also it's the hidden kind of sugar. So it's like the things like, the sweeteners they found out as almost as bad for you as the sugars are. Well, in fact, they're worse for you from things like, so I think there's a link I should be careful what I say, but one of the very well-known sweeteners to Alzheimer's.
And people just think, sweeteners is fine, and they don't really look into it.
They have a similar effect on the body than sugar does. And then there's also the hidden things where they go, oh no, I added sugar. That's rosemary.
Rosemary.
Yeah. Okay. So there's they say no added sugar, but then you look and there's like sucralose and maltodextrin and all these things that are not very good for you and essentially really have the same effect as sugars.
They have the same. It makes the body do the same thing, doesn't it? Not a fan of that one.
No, you didn't like the rosemary?
I think it's because too much associated with like chicken dinner. I think so far my favourite one was the first one.
The peanut.
Yeah. What's that one?
That was the caramelised white chocolate and miso, and then that's the lime, golden rum, white chocolate fudge.
Wow.
So that's going to be a bit fresher after all the other ones you've had. When I do the petit fours, we try and have at the end of a meal, try and have a little balance between some that have got a little bit of acidity and freshness in it.
Fudge?
Yeah.
Tastes really buttery. Yeah.
But there's only a little bit of butter in it.
Is it?
Yeah. So there's different types of fudge. So you can have the granular, like I think they call it the tablet in Scotland, where it's very granular and grainy and break down, and they cook it in a different way.
Yeah.
And then you can have the softer type fudges. I like them quite. I mean, they've been now sitting.
So how is that made? Like,
I think I can't give my secret.
but for me, if I was just blindly eating that tastes like a buttercream.
Right.
That you'd have on a cupcake or something like. So, and you said there's not a lot of butter.
So there's. I'm trying to think how much butter there would be in a whole batch. There's probably only about 30 grams of butter in the whole batch.
Wow, that's not a lot, is it? No,
there is quite a bit of there's a sugariness to that one. It's white chocolate. It's always going to be slightly sweeter than the others, but that's why I balance it with some of the rum, the aged rum, and
I didn't really get a lot of the rum,
and then the lime.
But I got a bit of the lime, but the rum, because normally I find I'm not a massive fan of alcoholic things, like especially chocolates and stuff. But no, that was nice. And then
caramelized white chocolate and miso. So obviously misos are like, it's the big thing at the moment. I've been using miso for quite a long time, but it brings that kind of umami note to it. But also it balances the saltiness of it, balances the caramelized white chocolate to some extent.
That's probably my favourite.
Yeah. Well, there's another one, so you can have they're all for you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to say that ones for later. Sugar rush. You said there's not a lot of sugar in there, is there?
I try not to add a load of excess sugar. So you find a lot of chocolates or chocolatier recipes. They call for like glucose to be added in. They go, oh, it's for texture, and so it does. So your ganache doesn't split. The ganache is the mixture of the cream and the chocolate, and sometimes the butter. But I don't like. Obviously, chocolate's got sugar in it, but I don't like to add extra sugar where it's not necessary. Obviously, in a fudge, you can add some extra sugar, but for all my other truffles, no, I don't add any glucose. Or sometimes they add. Why is it slipping my mind now? Inverted sugar syrup, things like that. All for kind of stability and texture and stuff, but I don't think it needs it if you make it.
Is that the only reason they add it in, just to make it more?
Also, some people, because they've never experimented otherwise, and they just stick to what they've been told. It's like when you get taught stuff of doing stuff a certain way. This is the problem they've got with a lot of catering colleges. So the restaurants that they come out, especially the fine dining restaurants, they come out of the catering college and go, they've learned all this stuff, but it's not really applicable to what we do.
No.
It's not, what they learn hasn't really got any practicality. And there are ways that they do things, and you're like, well, modern techniques aren't really like that anymore.
No.
And I think that probably goes the same for a lot of things. There'll be people that follow a methodology within any form of business, and you go and ask them why.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's the way we do it. That's the worst thing that I can ever hear in business. That's the way we do it. That's the way
it's done.
Because there's no understanding of why.
No.
If you can say understand why, then fine. Because then at least if you understand why, you can maybe question. Excuse me. But yeah, I think that'd be the thing that would make me kind of hit myself in the head if I was in business. Oh, that's the way we do it.
But then that goes back to your point of when people want to make a counter argument, like when they come with points and seeing why they do something, it adds sort of weight and substance to it. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose that loops back with everything we really talked about. It is about introspection.
Yeah.
And whether that's introspection in terms of what you do in your work life or your private life, or your social life, or whatever, is to have a little bit of the ability to take a step back and look and see what the real picture is. And that's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. No one really wants to substantially ask, how is this making me feel? Or
and probably a topic for another day.
Yeah.
Which I think we were going to discuss, but it was the relationship things that we were going to talk about. But one of the big things there is that it's very easy when something goes wrong in a relationship is to point a finger at the other person. The hard thing to do is turn the mirror on yourself and go, actually, I can't change what the other person's done, but what can I do better in the future myself? Or what am I not doing right? And that might sound harsh, especially if you've gone through a bad breakup or something, but it's the hardest thing to do generally is turn the mirror on yourself and go, okay, there are things I can't influence externally, other people, situations, markets, whatever, but what I can influence is my actions. And if you can do that, not saying I'm an expert in doing it, but I try to, but if you can do that and turn the spotlight on yourself, then and do the analysis, then I think there's a lot of benefit to it.
It is hard, but it's trying to not have that ego about it, isn't it? And go, no, I don't need to do it. But it rears its head. Thank you very much for being on.
Well, thank you for having me.
I definitely feel like there's going to be a round 2, which is good, and you can bring more chocolate.
Now we see the real reason.
There we go. Well, I didn't know I was going to get chocolate.